Lord Jesus Christ. When you travel, do you carry a medal of St. Christopher? He used to be quite famous. I think St. Benedict has overtaken him now, So do you carry a medallion of St. Benedict or St. Benedict's cross? Many people like to carry something sacred when they are traveling, a reminder that they don't travel alone. In our first reading, the Ark of the Covenant is moving. And this is not incidental. It reveals something essential about God. God is a God who journeys. The Ark was not merely a sacred object. It was a sign that God chose to dwell among his people. Inside were the stone tablets, the covenant, God's promise, carried through desert, uncertainties, and fear. Yet, there was a moment in Israel's history when this presence was misunderstood. The people began to treat the ark as something they could use. They carried it into battle without conversion of heart, and they lost it. Even then, God's presence could not be controlled. When the ark was taken into foreign land, it unsettled everything around it, not because God wished them, but because his holiness was not aligned to the hearts. Eventually, the ark was returned. And here is the key point. The ark moves because God is not static. He journeys with his people. He journeys in their hearts and through their hearts. And whenever his presence goes, things change. Now we read the gospel, we realize that Jesus too is traveling. Jesus crosses the lake. The crossing is deliberate. He moves towards those on the margins, towards the sick, towards those considered unclean. And when he arrives, people do not need explanations. Their hearts, their needs are aligned to Christ. They bring the sick. They reach out just to touch him, and all who touched him are healed. What the ark once represented, Jesus now embodies. What once rested in the ark, now the covenant walks among them. And the same God walks with us today. And we are invited to reflect on our own journeys, on our own crossings. Because we make many crossings every day, from home to work, from one responsibility to another, from strength into weakness. The lift ride before a difficult meeting becomes a crossing. The walk into work when our hearts are already tired reminds us of the crossings. They are not insignificant moments. Scripture reminds us today that God's presence heals when our hearts are aligned with him. When you stand in a crowded train and choose restraint instead of resentment, you carry God's presence. When you walk into the office without gossip, without sharp words, God's presence enters with you. When you cross into a tense conversation with patience, healing quietly begins. You see, we may not perform miracles, but the Lord performs them through us. Like the ark on the move, like Jesus crossing the lake, we bring God's presence into ordinary spaces. And wherever God's presence goes, healing follows when it is aligned. Today, in every journey, in every crossing, we do not go alone. We carry Jesus with us. It is nice to have St. Christopher or St. Benedict, but we must not carry these as charms because they remind us of the communion of saints. Because with the communion of saints, they remind us that God brings us into communion with Him. So let us then pray the prayer that we always pray before communion.